Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at vitamin D and how it impacts dogs and cats. You know, our listeners want to get a better understanding of how vitamin D works in their pets, what happens when there's too much or too little of it, and what the latest research has to say about all that. You sent over this really cool scientific review article. It's all about the role of vitamin D in bone metabolism for dogs and cats. So let's just jump right in. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me. And, right off the bat, we run into a pretty interesting fact. Dogs and cats can't actually make vitamin D from sunlight, unlike us humans. They rely completely on their diet for vitamin D.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's totally different from us humans then. Why is that?
Well, it most likely comes down to evolution. Their history is carnivores, so they evolved eating prey that was already full of vitamin D. So they never really needed to develop that ability to convert sunlight into vitamin D.
Oh, that's interesting. It really makes you appreciate how adaptable evolution can be. But okay, so once they get it from their food, how does vitamin D actually work in their bodies then? It can't just magically make their bones strong, right?
Right. There's definitely a process that happens. We have two main players here, cholecalciferol, also known as vitamin D3, and ergocalciferol, or vitamin D2. D3 mainly comes from animal sources, while D2 is found in plants and fungi. Both of them get absorbed from food, and then they go to the liver.
So the liver's the first stop on this whole vitamin D journey.
Yeah.
It is.
So in the liver,
Yeah.
both D2 and D3 are transformed into something called calcidiol, and then calcidiol travels to the kidneys, where it's converted into the active form of vitamin D. We just call it calcitriol.
Calcitriol. So that's the form of vitamin D that's actually doing all the work for bone health.
Yeah, exactly. Calcitriol is the real superstar. It's the one that regulates calcium and phosphorus levels in the body, which, as you know, are super important for building and maintaining strong bones.
So we've got this whole intricate pathway then, from food to liver to kidneys. But are there any differences between dogs and cats when it comes to how they use vitamin D?
Yeah, there are actually. So while both need vitamin D, cats are a lot more efficient at using D3, which again makes sense given their carnivorous diet. Dogs, on the other hand, can use both D2 and D3 pretty efficiently.
Wow, that's so interesting. That connection to their evolutionary diets is just fascinating. But, speaking of differences, the article you sent me mentioned something about giant dog breeds and vitamin D. There was
Yeah.
something about a mystery there.
Yeah. So this is where things get really interesting. Studies show that giant dog breeds actually have lower levels of a specific vitamin D metabolite, which is just a byproduct of vitamin D processing, called 24,025-OH2D, compared to smaller breeds.
So their size actually impacts how their bodies handle vitamin D.
It seems so. And scientists think that this difference might be why giant breeds are more susceptible to certain skeletal disorders during those big growth spurts. They think growth hormones could be at play there. But more research is definitely needed to fully understand how it all works.
It just makes you realize how much we're still learning
Yeah.
about vitamin D and how it works in different animals. I was also intrigued by something else, the idea that vitamin D could be involved in more than just bone health.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. While strong bones are a major benefit of vitamin D, research shows that it could be linked to a whole bunch of other health issues in pets too. We're talking everything from cancer and heart problems to gastrointestinal and kidney diseases. So yeah, there's a lot more to uncover.
Wow. So vitamin D is definitely super important for our pets.
Yeah.
But what happens when they don't get enough? What are some of the consequences of vitamin D deficiency?
Well, just like in humans, vitamin D deficiency can have some pretty serious consequences for pets. In young animals, it can lead to a condition called rickets, which basically means their bones are soft and weak because they haven't mineralized properly. And then in adult animals, it can cause something called osteomalacia, which also involves weakened bones that can easily fracture.
So basically, without enough vitamin D, their bones can't develop properly or stay strong. And I remember reading about another condition. It had a really long and complicated name.
You're probably thinking of nutritional secondary hyperparathyroidism. We usually just call it NSHP for short.
Yeah, that's it. So tell me more about that. What is NSHP and why does it happen?
So essentially, NSHP is a serious condition that can develop because of a vitamin D deficiency. Remember how we talked about calcitriol regulating calcium and phosphorus? Well, when there's not enough vitamin D, those levels get all messed up, and this can lead to the body producing too much parathyroid hormone, which tries to compensate by pulling calcium from the bones. So the result is weakened bones, and sometimes even deformities, like something called rubber jaw syndrome.
Wow, that sounds really serious. So getting enough vitamin D is definitely crucial. But what about the other side of things? Can pets have too much vitamin D?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. Absolutely. Just like with deficiency. Too much vitamin D can also be harmful to pets. It can lead to what we call hypercalcemia, which just means high blood calcium. And this can cause a whole lot of problems like increased thirst and urination, loss of appetite, weakness, and even seizures.
Okay, so that definitely doesn't sound good. So it sounds like finding that balance is key, not too much vitamin D
Yeah.
and not too little. But how do pets usually end up with too much vitamin D in the first place?
Well, oversupplementing can be one culprit. Sometimes pet owners think more is better when it comes to vitamins, but that's not always the case. Another major cause is accidental ingestion of rodenticides. Those often contain a form of vitamin D called cholecalciferol, which can be really toxic in high doses. And believe it or not, even certain topical ointments can cause vitamin D toxicity if they're ingested.
Wow, okay. So there are a lot of potential sources of excess vitamin D that pet owners need to watch out for. So if a pet does end up with a deficiency or even toxicity, how is it treated?
Well, the treatment really depends on the cause and how severe it is. Sometimes simple dietary changes can be enough. But for more serious cases, vets might prescribe medications like bisphosphonates, which work by slowing down bone resorption, which is just the natural breakdown and rebuilding of bone tissue.
Okay, so it sounds like you should always talk to your vet if you're worried about your pet's vitamin D levels. But before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, vitamin D's potential role in health issues beyond just bones. What are the implications of that? Should we be thinking about vitamin D differently now?
That's a great question, and I think it highlights just how important it is to stay up to date on the latest research. Given what we're learning about vitamin D's wider health impacts, it raises some pretty interesting questions, like should routine vitamin D testing become standard for pets, just like it is for humans in some cases? And if so, what new insights could we get about our furry friends' overall health and well-being?
Wow, that's a really thought-provoking idea. It makes you wonder what we could discover if we knew more about our pets' vitamin D levels.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads us to some of the challenges that researchers are facing as they try to learn more. One of the biggest hurdles is the lack of large-scale studies on vitamin D in pets. A lot of the current research is based on fairly small sample sizes, which makes it tough to draw firm conclusions or make broad recommendations.
Yeah, so we need more research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need more large and comprehensive studies that look at all the factors that can impact vitamin D levels, things like breed, age, diet, lifestyle. It's complicated.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But even with those challenges, I'm still really curious about all the potential discoveries that are waiting to be made. What are some of the things that you're most excited about in this field of research? What keeps you going?
You know what really fascinates me? It's just how much we're still learning about vitamin D's role in the body. Every new study seems to uncover another layer of complexity, and it just opens up all these new avenues for exploration. For example, we're only just starting to understand the potential connection between vitamin D and the gut microbiome in pets.
Oh, the gut microbiome. That's a pretty hot topic these days. You mean like all those microorganisms living in their digestive systems?
Exactly. And new research suggests that those microbes may actually play a role in vitamin D metabolism. It seems like there's this symbiotic relationship going on where the microbes help activate vitamin D, and then vitamin D might actually influence the composition and function of the microbiome.
So they're sort of influencing each other then?
Yeah, it seems that way. It really just goes to show how interconnected everything is in the body. And we're only beginning to scratch the surface when it comes to understanding the full extent of vitamin D's influence on pet health.
Wow, that's incredible. It really highlights just how complex everything is, even at the microscopic level.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that we still have so much to learn.
It's like this whole new frontier of scientific discovery, with so much potential to improve the lives of our pets. But beyond the science, what's the most practical advice you would give to pet owners right now? What are some key things they can do to make sure their furry friends are getting the right amount of vitamin D?
Well, the first and most important step is to feed your pet a complete and balanced diet that's appropriate for their life stage. Most high-quality commercial pet foods are formulated to meet their needs, including their vitamin D needs.
So reading those labels carefully is key.
Absolutely. But if you're feeding a homemade diet, it's really important to talk to a board-certified veterinary nutritionist. They can help you create a diet plan that meets all of your pet's nutritional needs, including vitamin D, without any imbalances.
That makes sense. You don't want to accidentally create a deficiency or overload them with too much of a nutrient. But what about supplements? Are those ever necessary when it comes to vitamin D?
Yeah, in some cases they are. For example, if your pet has a medical condition That affects their ability to absorb vitamin D. Your vet might recommend a supplement, but it's important to remember that more isn't always better, even with vitamin D.
So don't just start giving your dog extra vitamin D because you read something online about its benefits.
Exactly. In fact, excessive supplementation can be harmful. As we talked about earlier, it's always best to talk to your vet before giving your pet any supplements, including vitamin D. They can assess your pet's individual needs and determine if a supplement is really necessary. And they can recommend the right dosage.
So a balanced diet, regular vet checkups, and careful consideration of supplements. Those are the main takeaways for pet owners.
Yeah, you got it. By following those guidelines, you can help ensure your pet is getting the right amount of vitamin D to support their overall health and well-being. And if you ever have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to your vet. They're your best resource for keeping your pet happy and healthy.
One of the things that really surprised me today was that dogs and cats can't make vitamin D from sunlight. Like we can. I think that's a misconception a lot of people have.
Yeah, it is a common misconception. And it shows just how important it is to understand your pet's specific nutritional needs. Their bodies work differently from ours. And we need to understand those differences to give them the best possible care.
Okay, so just to recap, we learned that vitamin D takes quite a journey in our pets' bodies. It starts with absorbing cholecalciferol, or D3, and ergocalciferol, or D2. Then it transforms into calcidiol in the liver, and finally, it reaches its active form, calcitriol, in the kidneys. And we know that calcitriol is really important for regulating calcium and phosphorus levels, which are, of course, essential for healthy bones.
Right. And we also learned that vitamin D does so much more than just build strong bones. Emerging research suggests it may be involved in a whole bunch of other health issues, from cancer and heart disease to gastrointestinal and kidney problems. It's a really exciting area of research with a lot of potential for future discoveries.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be learning about this stuff. I mean, we've come a long way in our understanding. But there's still so much more to discover.
Yeah, there really is. And speaking of all those future discoveries, we talked about routine vitamin D testing for pets. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it could become a regular part of vet care?
It's a really interesting thought. I mean, if you think about it, routine blood work already gives vets so much information about our pets' overall health. Adding vitamin D to that could give us even more insight, right?
Exactly. It could be really valuable for preventative care, helping catch deficiencies early before they turn into bigger problems. And who knows, maybe we'd even discover new connections between vitamin D levels and certain health conditions.
Yeah. It's like opening a new window into their well-being. But are there any challenges to studying vitamin D in pets that might make routine testing difficult?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is that lack of large-scale studies that we were talking about earlier. A lot of the current research is based on smaller groups of animals, which makes it hard to draw really solid conclusions or make general recommendations.
So we're still working with a limited amount of data.
Yeah, that's right. We need larger, more comprehensive studies that really take into account all the variables that can influence vitamin D levels. Things like breed, age, diet, how active they are. That's a lot to consider.
Yeah, like a giant puzzle with all these different pieces. But I'm curious, besides those research challenges, what are some of the things that excite you the most about this whole field? What keeps you so passionate about studying vitamin D?
You know what I find really fascinating? It's how much we're still uncovering. Every new study seems to reveal another layer of complexity, which just makes me want to learn even more.
Yeah.
For example, there's one area that I find really interesting right now, the potential link between vitamin D and the gut microbiome in pets.
The gut microbiome, that's a pretty hot topic these days. So we're talking about that whole ecosystem of microorganisms living in their digestive system, right?
Exactly. And emerging research actually suggests that those gut microbes might actually play a role in how vitamin D is metabolized. It seems like there's this kind of partnership happening where the microbes help activate vitamin D, and then vitamin D could influence the balance and function of those microbes.
So they're impacting each other.
Yeah, it seems that way. It just goes to show how interconnected everything is. Within the body, we're only just starting to understand this complex relationship between vitamin D, gut health, and overall well-being.
It sounds like we're on the verge of some really groundbreaking discoveries, but let's bring it back to the practical stuff for a minute. What advice can we give to pet owners right now, based on what we know? How can they make sure their furry friends are getting enough vitamin D?
The most important thing is to provide a complete and balanced diet. Most high-quality commercial pet foods are formulated to meet their needs, including vitamin D, so that's always a good starting point.
So checking those pet food labels for vitamin D is a good idea.
Absolutely. But if you're feeding a homemade diet, it's really important to work with a board-certified veterinary nutritionist. They can help you create a meal plan that provides all the essential nutrients, including vitamin D, without creating any imbalances.
So professional guidance is important. For those homemade diets, what about vitamin D supplements? Are those ever necessary?
Well, there are definitely some situations where supplements might be recommended. For instance, if your pet has a medical condition, that affects their ability to absorb vitamin D. Your vet might suggest a supplement to make sure they're getting enough. But it's important to remember that more isn't always better, even with vitamins.
So no need to rush out and buy extra vitamin D just because you read about the benefits online.
Exactly. Oversupplementing can actually be harmful, as we talked about earlier. Always talk to your vet before giving your pet any supplements, including vitamin D. They can help figure out if a supplement is necessary and recommend a safe dosage.
Okay, so balanced diet, regular vet checkups, and being careful with supplements are the key takeaways for pet owners?
Exactly. Yep. By following those guidelines, you can help make sure your furry friend is getting the right amount of vitamin D. And remember, your vet is always the best resource for any questions you have about your pet's health and nutrition.
You know, it was really eye-opening to learn that dogs and cats can't make vitamin D from sunlight. Like we can. I think a lot of people have that misconception.
It's a very common one. It really highlights the importance of understanding your pet's specific needs. They're not just small humans.
Right. So we've busted that myth, and we learned about the whole journey that vitamin D takes inside their bodies, from absorption to its transformation into that active form, calcitriol. And we know now that calcitriol is crucial for regulating calcium and phosphorus, which are so important for bone health.
Right. And we also explored the emerging evidence that vitamin D might be involved in a lot more than just bone health. It might play a role in immune function, cancer risk, gut health, maybe even cognitive function. It's an exciting area of research with lots to discover.
It is exciting. We talked about the potential for routine vitamin D testing for pets, which could lead to earlier diagnoses, and maybe even unlock new insights into their overall health. And we talked about the challenges facing researchers, like the need for those larger scale studies.
Right. And don't forget that fascinating connection between vitamin D and the gut microbiome, which shows us this really complex relationship between nutrition, gut health, and overall well-being. It's a good reminder that our understanding of the body is always changing, and there's always more to learn.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, always revealing more complexity. So where do we go from here? What are some of the big questions that researchers are still trying to answer about vitamin D and pet health?
That's a great question. I think one of the biggest questions is, how can we turn all this research into practical recommendations for pet owners? How can we use this knowledge to develop personalized nutrition plans that optimize vitamin D levels and support overall health? And how can we educate pet owners about the importance of vitamin D and the risks of both deficiency and excess?
It sounds like there's a push towards personalized medicine for our pets, just like what we're seeing in human healthcare.
Exactly. That's one of the most exciting directions this field is moving in. Imagine being able to analyze a pet's DNA, their gut microbiome, their lifestyle, and other factors to figure out their exact vitamin D needs. It could completely change the way we think about pet nutrition.
Wow. It would be like having a customized roadmap to optimal health for each pet.
Exactly. And it could help us prevent deficiencies and toxicities and make sure every pet is getting the right amount of vitamin D.
That's definitely a future I'm excited for. But even before we get to that level of personalization, what are some practical steps pet owners can take right now to make sure their pets are getting what they need?
Well, the first thing is to choose a high-quality pet food, one that's formulated to meet their nutritional needs. Make sure it includes vitamin D. And talk to your vet if you need help choosing the right food.
And if you're making your own pet food at home, definitely consult with a veterinary nutritionist.
Exactly. And remember, supplements should only be given if your vet recommends them. Don't try to diagnose or treat any potential vitamin D problems on your own.
Always better to be safe. And talk to a professional. So besides diet and supplements, are there any other things pet owners should keep in mind when it comes to vitamin D?
Well, even though dogs and cats can't make vitamin D from sunlight like we can, exposure to sunlight is still important for their overall health. Regular walks and playtime outdoors are beneficial for so many reasons, including maintaining healthy vitamin D levels.
So even though they can't directly convert sunlight into vitamin D, sunshine still matters.
Absolutely. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Just like with humans. Too much sun can be harmful. It can cause sunburn and other skin problems, but moderate exposure is good
Yeah.
for both their physical and mental health.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. A little knowledge and common sense go a long way.
This whole deep dive has been so interesting. I had no idea. Vitamin D was so complex and played such an important role in so many aspects of pet health.
It's a fascinating nutrient,
Right.
and we're just scratching the surface when it comes to understanding it. But one thing's for sure, vitamin D is essential for our furry friends, and understanding its role is part of being a responsible pet owner.
And as research continues, I'm sure we'll uncover even more fascinating things
Yeah.
about this essential nutrient. Wow, it's amazing how much we've learned today about vitamin D. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of it now.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for sure. From the basics of bone health to those fascinating new discoveries about the gut microbiome and everything, there's just so much to learn about this nutrient.
And as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with one last thing to think about. We talked about personalized nutrition for pets, tailoring their diets to their specific needs. Do you think that's something we could actually see in the future? Like vitamin D recommendations based on each pet's individual profile?
You know, it's a really interesting concept, and I definitely think it's possible. I mean, we're already seeing personalized nutrition becoming more and more common for humans
Yeah.
with DNA testing and microbiome analysis. So it's not hard to imagine those same advancements being used for our pets someday.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Imagine getting a detailed report on your pet's specific vitamin D needs based on their breed, age, lifestyle, even their genes. It would be like having a personalized blueprint for their health.
Exactly. We could fine-tune their diets and supplements with so much precision, it could really change everything.
It's a pretty exciting vision for the future of pet care.
It really is. And it shows just how far we've come in understanding the connection between nutrition, genetics, and overall well-being.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
To all our listeners out there, we hope you found this episode informative and helpful. And remember, if you have any questions or concerns about your pet's vitamin D levels, talk to your veterinarian. They're your best resource for keeping your furry friend happy and healthy.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And happy diving.